What's up, people? Okay, guys, so basically, this is a new series that I'm going to start. I've already watched this video, so it's really a response rather than a reaction. But this video series that I'm going to make is called They Were So Close and Yet Blank. And the and yet can be like, for example, MAGA people who want to claim that they want to have like community farms and they don't want as much restrictions to prevent themselves from actually being able to be more self-sufficient. But the government actually prevents that right now. And within the Republican institution, it's still not allowed. So that's that. Or, for example, we need to get rid of wealth equality. I mean, you see that in MAGA like rallies where they say stuff like that. That's one example. This is the other example where it's like this guy is like so onto something in a way, but not, where he's like he's nearing the next conclusion to these statements that he's making without actually saying it or maybe acknowledging it or maybe even noticing it. I'm not sure. But this was an interesting video. This guy's not a bad guy, actually. This guy, I actually kind of like his coverage. He's kind of accurate with the figures that he brings up, and he basically talks about how things are changing when it comes to the economy and life for the average person. So let's get on to it.
For the past year, we have seen a ton of companies perform mass layoffs as our leaders of our country tell us that everything is fine and we are in the greatest economy ever. But just in the
And this is another huge thing. He just acknowledged it. That is so true, where the Biden-Harris administration did not do enough to counter wealth inequality. Or maybe enough is such a subjective word, but they didn't do enough to the average person to where they feel it, to where they notice it. Trump's names were on the COVID checks. Nothing like that was done with any policy that made it better for the average person. So let's keep going with this.
Field alone, okay, only technology companies in 2024, there were over 150,000 people who were laid off. You have Intel topping the charts at 15,000 people laid off in 2024. Tesla comes in at number 2 with 14,000 people laid off in 2024. Google laid off 12,000 people in 2024.
Let me tell you, they love their H-1Bs and they love outsourcing every like labor piece that they can to India or to any other country, where, you know, when it comes to like basic IQ, a bunch of people will argue, oh, this is based on race and all this. No, it's not. It's mostly based on what you surround yourself with. And genuinely, if you pull someone across any part of the country and you teach them to do something, they'll be able to do it well. Anyone pulled out of any country, out of any state, for the most part, as long as they're, you know, I mean, IQ is on the basis of training for the most part. It is very, very rare to find someone incapable of doing work. So it's very rare to literally pull someone from any part of the planet and not have them able to learn to code. For example, if they're put through a whole intensive course on coding and they're given economic stability for that time period. A lot of times in the United States, a lot of boot camps that we have, a lot of things in colleges, and a lot of programs that we have last at least 10 months for you to be like ready for one of these kinds of jobs. And the reason why these jobs are outsourced is because a lot of times these people were paid like $60K a year, because it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, and it is nearly impossible, like functionally impossible, to be awake for that training and work, assuming that you work night shifts for 40 hours a week. And so it's nearly impossible for the average American to do it. It's not even a matter of intelligence. But what this guy is saying is true, and these companies are cost-cutting in that regard.
Meta laid off 11,000 in 2024. Microsoft laid off 10,000 people. And Amazon laid off 10,000 people. And the list just goes on.
Amazon was actually exposed recently for having their their like supermarkets that they had in person. They were apparently using high like level AI in order to detect if someone, you know, grabs a specific item, puts it in their basket, or like grabs an item in their basket and puts it back on the shelf. And so you could just walk out the store and that'll be checkout. You don't have to pull out your wallet. You don't have to do anything. Well, the interesting thing about that was it was not AI. It was hundreds of workers in India And they were just constantly supervising those stores. And obviously, they're not getting paid as much as American workers. They can be shorted that pay. And so it is sent to them, and that responsibility is sent to them. And companies will always lie to inflate their prices to their stock. Companies will always cost cut to lie about their stock even further. They will buy back to make their stock look even prettier for the investor and for all these like private financial like groups and venture capitalists.
But before you think this is just going to be all doom and gloom, at the end, I'm going to share with you some encouraging stats for people who want to get a remote work job, and even give you the 20 companies that are hiring the most people right now for remote work, because a lot of people have been losing their remote work
about what
job.
he said near the end is a lot of this work does have a prerequisite. So it's not for everyone. But I'm glad that there is something that he's putting in here that can help some people that are out of a job for a while.
Jobs, and there are still opportunities out there. So all hope is not lost. But right now, we have all these store closures that are happening. You know, over the next 6 months, you're going to see Party City and Big Lots close down over 2,200 stores nationwide. Yep. Where you're literally going to have tens of thousands of people who work for those stores.
This is what happens when these companies are fucked over by the bigger conglomerates and they're bought up and they're beaten competition. Oh well, they beat mom and pop stores. Now Amazon's beating all these Walmart, not Walmart right now. Walmart's actually working on automating their stuff as well. But whenever they're beating these stores like Party City and Family Dollar or any of these other smaller companies, I can't feel bad. I can't, you know?
Stores out of work that are not even out of a job yet. So it's safe to say, by looking at the current economic situation and the current job market in the United States, that the situation is on shaky ground at best. But let's talk about the 9 to 5 job, because the 9 to 5 job is something that is quickly becoming extinct. The 9 to 5 was originally created by American labor unions in the 1900s, and before that, it was not uncommon for people to work 80 hours a week plus and not even get overtime pay or any type of benefits, really nothing. But over this past year, we have been lied to so heavily.
Imagine working 80 a week and getting nothing. That would be so crippling. But this is so true with what he's mentioning, is that labor unions fought for all the legal rights and protection that, like, protections right now that workers have, and now labor unions are too weak. Labor unions, are just incapable of being functional in a lot of different places just because of public sentiment, and it is like changing. It is clearing out. A lot of the anti-union propaganda to the average person it's starting to be more visible to them. So one thing I was going to mention is that I worked seasonal last year for an Amazon warehouse, and I really wanted to join the Teamsters there, but I was too anxious. I couldn't. I knew that they'd laid me off in January, and I was right. And so I have, like all that stuff from overtime. I have my rent basically paid for the next 2 months. I'm good in that regard. But the big problem with this is that after that, I'm fucked. And I'm still job hunting. I'm still getting there. I apply to 3 a day. That's my rule. 3 a day. 3 unique ones, follow one up. And that's what I've been doing. And I'll get another one soon. I already know it. It's not going to be the best pay. But my journey with that helped me realize that public sentiment in that Amazon warehouse, this is North Texas for context. This is kind of close to the Dallas area, but not really. That's where I was working. So essentially, a lot of the people there were bootlickers. A lot of the people there, for example, my brother was fucked over with like negative UPT because his knee was in pain, and we both worked at the same warehouse. That way we split commute with Uber. And so he was basically begging the HR lady near the end of peak to refund the UPT. And she was like, no, imagine if you're running a business. And I'm like, oh my fucking gosh. The moment I heard him say that she said that, oh, dude. Feel bad for the business owner who needs another private jet, another private yacht. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, you know, it's just such a clown show. But a lot of the people there are real kiss ups. There were many points where my brother, while working there, was told by this one old ass lady to work harder. For what? For what? Madame? The same pay? Hell no. So this is where we're at. Anyways, I'll
about
pause there
how
for way
many
too long.
jobs have been created. And by the time all the revisions are in, we are likely to see a situation where there was maybe even no jobs created at all in 2024.
So this is
Especially-
also very interesting. This is so true that now a lot of the job boards that are fake have been getting taken down slowly over time. However, now there are job boards that mimic company names. They mimic company names but have a different domain where like the company name is used verbatim. However, with careers, some other words are used in that website and in that domain to mimic that company. And these are the data brokers in the modern day. And I wouldn't be surprised if the data brokers were in cahoots with the companies that they're mimicking so that they can both get a deal and get some money out of it. Because this is how these things work. These companies
you
are
factor in-
carteles.
How many of them were
Carteles.
lost and how many of them were never created to begin with? You know, fast
Yeah.
forward to today, many
There's
Americans
so
are
many fake ones.
overemployed.
The other thing is, like, for example, when I tried to apply to Target last year, when, you know, I was having a hard time working at Walmart, I was like, fuck this, I'm going to Target. I went to Target Careers officially, and I applied. I applied for, I think it was like early morning, what's it called? Like backroom. And I worked the backroom at Walmart for a good amount of time. So it was like, okay, cool. So I can go there, right? No. I go there in person. And the person up there, the manager, tells me, no, the job listing isn't real. Or not real, but no, we didn't have a job listing. Where's the job listing? Where is it? Are you making things up? Where's the job listing, buddy? Same thing happened at Kroger. Same thing happened at multiple different stores that I've tried to apply to locally. And it's because they are cartels. Because they will say that they're hiring, but they're not. This was mostly for the PPP loan, by the way. Now, how companies are with fake job boards is mostly for data brokers. And so their prominence is much lower. That is good. However, they're still everywhere. You cannot run away from them.
Meaning they have to work multiple jobs in order to increase their incomes just to be able to make ends meet. I'm
Overemployment,
sure a
yep.
lot of people who watch my channel can relate to this exact scenario because you're probably living this reality right now.
This reality.
And did you know
only have 3
that as a human being, 2/3 of your value as a human is the amount of work /
This was true. This was assessed by the Reagan administration, and scientists at the time actually knew the harm that asbestos would do to people. And they still went through with it because they chunked the numbers when it came to the cost cutting in comparison to the people dying to asbestos. And they were like, okay, it's actually worth it for people to die to asbestos. So, you know, these humans aren't actually worth as much as the money we get out of them. And there is a specific calculator that different government officials literally use to determine how much a person is worth in comparison to practices that they can do that is anti-human. And they will assess that. They will assess that value. They will assess that with the companies that are lobbying these senators that we have, and they'll make the decision from there.
labor you can perform over your lifetime. That's how you're valued in today's society. But a lot of people actually liked this for a long time because after the
Yeah,
9-to-5
well,
job was
it's not even a matter of
introduced,
liking
you were
it.
essentially
Okay. So, liking it is definitely an overstatement. No one actually likes the idea of work. People like the arrangement of the 9-to-5 because their protections were there. And now a lot of the protections that labor unions worked for about 100 years ago are actively being overwritten. So while, yes, they did like it, they liked it because there was a society that they had with job stability. There was an economy that they had with job stability. And no one realistically, if everyone could stop working, it wouldn't be an instance where everyone would stop. I think a lot of people would still do things to help out their community, but there wouldn't be huge conglomerates the same way we have right now. And so the idea of like, oh, if everyone chose to stop working, everyone would stop working. That's generally not how things are. People will find meaning in some kind of way and do something for some other people. There will always be a need to get food, like there will always be a need for something. And even under different models of communism that people argue for, it is not a matter of people not doing it. It's a matter of like people not having to, and a sense of community will push people towards labor. But anyways, whatever. Fuck all that. We're back to the video. Let's go.
Working a set amount of hours each week, and you know more or less how much you're going to be working, and you know more or less what your pay is going to be each week.
Yeah.
And it created stability that a
Yep.
lot of workers enjoyed. And a lot of people have been happy with that arrangement for decades up until recently. And the problem is today that there's just not a one-size-fits-all approach to.
That's the thing too, is it's like no one, or what I was going to say is like no one likes working for things that they don't actually own, that they don't actually do for the community. It's all by like a third party sort of company. For example, let's say you work at an assembly line job. You are not physically owning the things that you make, and you are not physically distributing the things that you make, and you are not like choosing where that goes. No, we have a little like middleman called currency that we use, and also we have a middleman called the company that actually owns the excess labor that we have. And so within a capitalist model, most people do opt for labor unions. And labor unions, while they're seen as a more socialist sort of approach, it's pretty far from a socialist approach, because the private owner still owns the company. However, the average worker leverages their ability to work to make sure that they are treated well. We don't have any of this. So, I think it's funny when Democrats get called socialists for calling this stuff out, where it's like, okay, we need unions. Well, unions are socialists. Okay, well, whatever. Okay, cool.
to the modern
Still fit
labor
into capitalist
market.
framework.
And this is causing some major rifts in the job market. And here are really the two main ones. The first one is that your time no longer equals the same amount of money. For example, back when the 9-to-5 job was introduced, Henry Ford was the first one to really implement this at the Ford Motor Company. His promise was simple. It was, you're going to work 40 hours a week here, and no more, no less. And it's going to be 9 to 5. So the hours are predictable, so is the pay. A lot of people like
Henry Ford wasn't the most progressive figure. He was doing this in hesitation of these labor unions coming up and becoming a problem for his company and other companies. So he decided to put in these these minimums for his company, at least, to pay the workers. And that leverage over time kind of quelled civil unrest, but it still acted up. So
that. And Ford made such a splash in the labor market that it actually,
like, the history of Ford doing it first actually makes sense, but Ford isn't like some sort of angelic company that like saves people, or did before. It was really doing what it had to do to save its own bottom line.
created a situation where a lot of other companies were kind of pressured into the same sort of situation. A modern day reference to this is you can look at what's happening with the minimum wage laws in places like Washington State and in California. Different fast food restaurants are required to pay $20 an hour minimum wage now, right? But if you're a business that's not paying $20 an hour minimum wage, then you basically have to, even if you're not required to by law, because you're now competing with all the employers who are being forced to do that. And the same thing happened back when the 9-to-5 was introduced.
So this idea is kind of an illusion. It is a half-truth. That, like, those jobs existing do not pressure other companies if those positions are filled up the most. So let's say, for example, McDonald's, ends up paying people $20 an hour because they have to. And it's the only company nearby that pays people $20 an hour. Well, the problem with that is that everyone will try to work at McDonald's constantly, and those positions will be filled up pretty quickly. This doesn't pressure other companies that much because McDonald's is constantly staffed anyways. So they still have the same leverage that they do. It's really just organizing.
So many
that
companies quickly
problems.
adopted it in order to make sure all their workers wouldn't quit. And the 9-to-5 schedule worked particularly good for factory jobs and assembly line jobs because basically 1 hour's worth of work was always consistent in terms of the expected output for that 1 hour worth of work, meaning that the employer could expect the same amount of work to be done each and every hour an employee is at work. So it was also a favorable condition for them. It was reliable. They knew they could count on the work.
Well, this is true. It still remains true when it comes to whole shifts. Companies will just try to purposely put you on like 3-hour shifts. That way they could squeeze more excess value out of you as a worker. They still get a lot of excess value if you were put there for an 8-hour shift. But for example, the difference between paying you an extra $30, $40 a day, or, you know, an extra like $100 to $400 a week, it might seem like pennies to these guys, but it will allow CEOs to get, for example, those crazy ass bonuses where it's like 30% bonus. And so the whole idea of like contracts and services to work for like temporary periods of time, this is actually predatory on the end of the company, where it is getting all the excess labor all at once. And so the worker is not nearly compensated as much as they would being a normal associate. That, and they will not have the same sorts of employment benefits because they are contracted. So for example, they will not have health insurance, and they will not have any of these other benefits. This is actually something that Amazon does with its new workers. They put them as seasonal associates, otherwise known as white badges. White badges do not have my career choice options. They do not have options to get higher education through Amazon. They are also not treated as actual employees. So if they try to unionize or organize, they will be laid off, and they will be labeled as not related to Amazon. And it's because directly they're employed by a third party, and Amazon will choose to make them associate if, you know, they have to. Realistically, they have to have a certain amount of blue badges, you know, but otherwise this is literally just exploitation. It's a different method of it
Getting done as long as the employees were present. But fast forward to today, in 2025, unless you are working in a field like manufacturing or farming or some other type of labor job where the labor can be very consistent in terms of the amount of output that can be made on an hourly basis, then it's much harder to have a consistent level of output in modern day working scenarios due to the nature of the work we do today.
Well, it's funny because those jobs are now being treated as if they're contract jobs in a lot of different companies now. So it's like this private contracting thing being done with more high paying, more high skilled labor jobs, it somewhat makes sense, but it also like, it opens up the floodgates. It opens up the floodgates for companies to literally just treat you like garbage and treat you like a cum dumpster and then fire you.
Because there's so many different types of jobs that are available now, mostly in some sort of service or technology or nursing field, these jobs don't have a definitive amount of labor that can be performed in a 1-hour period, because the tasks change day by day. Even how long it takes to perform certain tasks can change day by day. And so basically the amount of work that any given person can get done on a daily basis has shifted. But despite that,
so the difference between that is, from what I know about the ideas of like software development, the ideas of ethical hacking, the ideas of, you know, anything related to information technology at a higher level, a lot of the work is not actually doing the work, but rather thinking about logical sorts of problems in your head and thinking about like how to specifically put this in code for hours on end, or how to specifically solve this one specific problem. Or like, for example, oh, the JavaScript interface doesn't work. Oh, we need to make sure that there's no like server interaction for people who just decide to inspect and try to like hack into our shit. You know, there are multiple ways where people will have to try to troubleshoot problem solutions stuff that has either not been done, or maybe they can't find the forums online. And so a lot of times, yeah, people will have to methodically think things through. And these contract sorts of jobs, they will only pay like the labor while it's being done. So they're really only accounting for you typing that shit out rather than you trying to like solve it in your head.
the corporate world is still kind of stuck into this 9-to-5 routine, but they are starting to break away from it, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the thing is, this dynamic ends up being bad for employees, because when you're very busy, then you're expected to work a reasonable amount of unpaid overtime at your job in most cases today, which is obviously going to make people feel resentment towards their boss and their job. And then when things slow down, you're supposed to still show up for a 40-hour work week, even when there might only be half the amount of work to do than there was last week. So there's not a lot of consistency when it comes to work. And this is why more people than ever have been turning towards gig work. In fact, gig work has now
I do it. Yep. Because I saw the video as a whole, and this whole thing pissed me off. Where he's so close, he doesn't understand how gig work exploits workers so much more than It's just a part of this whole corporate system that is intended to fuck over the average person. And then it's like, okay, well then be better than average. And the average raise, oh, be better than that. Oh, the average raise again. Oh, be better. You should have to be better than everyone. No. Realistically, a lot of times when it comes to make money, you just have to be a sadistic motherfucker who is trying to take away all the benefits that they can from workers, and then more money is made off of it. More money actually flows up, and it constipates up. Does not trickle down. It is constipating.
Grown regular work by 500% over this past decade since it's become hugely popular. And the reason why it has gained so much popularity is due to the low barrier of entry, due to how easy it is to get into gig work. Basically, if you have a smartphone and you're an able-bodied person, you can do gig work pretty much starting tomorrow, or at the very latest, maybe next week. You don't have to go through interviews or lengthy application processes, pretty much just a background screening, and that's it, you're in. And from the worker's point of view, this is a tremendous advantage, right? You get to set your own schedule, you get to start working immediately, you get to work the days and hours you want to work, you can also work extra long hours, or you can just not work at all that day. So that provides a tremendous amount of flexibility that people really want to have in their work life. Now, the pay usually isn't great for a lot of these gig working jobs, but it has the flexibility that people want and need, and you can also tie it in with another full-time job or a part-time job.
This is the problem, is like a lot of these things are being heralded as more flexible. It's easier on you to do gig work. Why not do gig work? I mean, you're not getting the same unit rate out of the work that you're doing in comparison to working a normal job, but why not do it? It's so appealing, isn't it? Well, here's the other part of the equation. How many gigs do you have to put food on the table and pay for electricity? How many gigs do you have to pay that rent? How many gigs do you have to pay that water? How many gigs do you have to pay for it all? Almost as if you're working more than 40 a week to have less than what you would have if you were working 40 a week. I think my mind is broken, and I hope y'all's are too, because that's a crazy sort of solution. That's a crazy sort of pattern of thought I just concocted. All right, let's keep going.
Increase your pay or to increase your flexibility. What we're also seeing is a lot of skilled workers who are starting to do the same, but in the form of freelance work or the form of contract work, because it provides the same sort of flexibility that gig work does, but at a higher level for people who have professional skills. Even part of this YouTube channel is an example of this, because every time, for example, you see I have a sponsor here on the channel, or you see any YouTube video that is sponsored, that's a perfect example of contract or freelance work. I'm guaranteed a one-time payment for a one-time job, and sometimes it's an ongoing contract and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a one-off. So in that case, it provides flexibility for both parties involved, and it saves companies money because you don't have to have somebody on the payroll, so to speak. So I take my money, do the sponsorship. The company doesn't have to have me on their permanent payroll, and it saves them money, and they get the results that they're looking for. You also see a lot of people in the medical field, especially today, starting to work in temporary staffing jobs. This allows them to protect their mental health and work less hours, because when you work in the medical field, especially at a hospital, your hours can be highly unpredictable. And also, let's be honest, going back to the beginning of this video, there's not much.
That is pretty true when it comes to hospital jobs or being a doctor, being anything like that. Contracting can actually save your ass, because oh my gosh, the moment where you're called in multiple times, the moment you're called in when you're trying to sleep, when you just get home, you take a shower, and it's like, fuck, I gotta go back. With jobs like being a doctor, with jobs like cybersecurity, which I was looking into to try to get into, and I'm not entirely sure if I even can at this point with the way AI has been developing. I know the AI can't tell how many R's are in Strawberry, but I promise you guys, if there is a next version of GPT or whatever the fuck that is coming out that is more powerful than this one, it probably will be able to mimic most of the sub skills that humans have. Robotics are able to do that when it comes to any like the physical labor that we can do. I doubt that our intellectual labor is that special. I really do. Like the idea of having consciousness, that is different, but the idea of still being able to like figure things out, to methodically think things through, to notice patterns, all that is already being done. All that's already being done on a basic level, and if it gets better, then we're all kind of fucked. So that's that. And the other thing is that I still need more certs and training. So I'm definitely not even there yet, and I'm hoping that if I get to that point, you know, with the certs and the training, I don't get fucked over by AI. But I also know that I might be. So
incentive
whatever
for people anymore to even be working a 9-to-5 job. You know, look at how insecure jobs have become over the past couple of decades.
Highly
you know, I think
insecure,
job
yes.
security will quickly become a vocabulary word of the past because it really no longer exists. Job security, you know, might have existed 40, 50 years ago in a meaningful way, but it really hasn't over the past few decades. People have become more and more disposable. Now we have AI starting to make that even more so. And this is a problem
true.
that's likely only to get worse, not better. So it actually could be very beneficial for workers as well, now that we have basically started to eliminate the
This is the problem, is he's mentioning how beneficial it can be for workers, but this is a tactic that corporate companies are actively using to get more work out of us. This is very, I'm seeing the parallels, okay? I'm seeing the parallels when it comes to, like, for example, when streaming services first started, and the unit rate per each service that you have is much lower than cable TV. So a lot of people opt for the specific streaming services that they want over cable TV. Over time, people have been accustomed to the streaming services, so now they are increasing prices, and it is infinitely cheaper to have like cable TV over like 3 of these streaming services, or maybe even 2 of these streaming services, depending on what they are, and they aren't even fully ad free when you pay for them. So this is the same thing that gig work is going to be. It is going to be seen in the same way this guy is talking about it, where it's going to be seen as some revolutionary new way to work. And then over time, companies will decide to either pay you less as a unit rate per gig work, or maybe less gig work is going to be available, or maybe the idea of this gig work and the opportunities will dry up and become highly elitist, like most jobs are right now, where it's like, okay, entry level, 3 to 5 years experience. Bam. Perfect. Let's go with that. And then in the future, OSINT tools and data collection tools are going to be so powerful that you're going to be less capable of lying on resumes. So now it's come to a point where you have 0 options to do like anything ever. And not only am I shaking right now when it comes to my fear of that, I'm already seeing these tactics being done right now. And it's like, I didn't sign up for this world. I didn't ask to be in this world. And people made it a shit shack.
9-to-5 job, and people are starting to do more freelance and contract and gig work, and people can now take more control of how much work they do and how consistent they are with work, not their employer. But there are definitely some drawbacks to this setup, especially for the employee, because right now, this change, moving away from the 9-to-5 job, is actually more beneficial for the employer than the employee or the contract worker. When you're no longer an employee for a company, you lose all of your benefits, right? When you're self-employed, you're in charge of all of your own benefits. You want to have a 401k, you got to start one on your own. You want to have health insurance, you need to start one on your own. Paid time off, no such thing. And here's the other thing, when it comes to health insurance, just a quick side note, guys, it is a lot more expensive to have health insurance as a self-employed individual than if you're getting it through your job. Like, for example,
I'm so glad this is being acknowledged, but he's still like framing gig work as a positive thing. Why? He's so close. He's so close. He's so close to
my
the
personal
point.
example,
He's so close to understanding these power structures, but he's missing that detail. He's missing the connection.
example here, I just had to get my own private health insurance set up again for 2025. And just for me and my wife, just us, we are now paying $1,200 a month for.
This is why I don't pay for health insurance. This is why I'm not as reckless as I was when I was a kid. I do not do parkour anymore. I do not even do somersaults on the sidewalk. I don't do shit. If I work out, I do push-ups and squats, and I shadow box, or I do something else. I don't exercise like I did before when I was a kid. I do not go outside in that same way, because a chipped tooth, a broken knee, a broken bone, some sort of thing, you're gonna, you got your arm broken. You need a cast. Oh, well, how about you cast me $10,000 fucking dollars for it? No, I ain't doing that.
Private health insurance, and it's gotten so expensive that it's honestly getting to the point where I'm not sure it's even worth having anymore. Really, the only thing that keeps us paying for it is just, in case of an emergency. Just like people who still have homeowners insurance but have a paid off house, it's kind of the same feeling right now with this.
Yep.
So this is actually very advantageous for businesses, because even though businesses tend to...
let me listen to this point, actually.
Those back-end expenses like benefits and health insurance and 401k.
Benefits, health insurance, labor costs, they can go back on some of that. That's cool. It's actually beneficial for both of us if they do that.
Matches and different things that they have to do for their employees. They also don't have to pay unemployment in case they no longer are working there. That's another added benefit.
Fuck the Skyview.
What the coincidentally, okay? Companies that we talked about in the beginning that have performed the most layoffs this year, coincidentally, okay? These companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, Uber, they all now have more contract workers working for them.
Oh, who would have known? These companies that are laying off people, it's actually a good thing, and they're taking away most of their workers' benefits. Oh my gosh, I love how you mentioned the 9-to-5 being dead, and it is predatory, the idea of the 9-to-5 job, because we know that if more people were actually working in our society, we would not even need a 9-to-5 for fucking 5 days a week. We'd probably have it for 4, maybe 3 days a week if people are sufficiently hired. There are nearly 1 million homeless people in this country. Or maybe not 1 million, maybe 100,000. It's a one with a bunch of fucking zeros at the end. There are a bunch of those people that can work, that probably will work if they were given the option, or probably would have been before they were homeless, but then they were down on their luck at one point, then they become addicted to drugs, and, maybe they need mental health work. Maybe that's true for a lot of them. But a lot of them, if they were given a sufficient opportunity in life, will fucking take it. So, this is the problem. And then also we have semi-affluent people working these bullshit administrative jobs that they don't need to work, and they can just be working like everyone else, and everyone as a total can be working way less hours. But no, we have to have these bullshit administrative jobs that don't even require any technical skill to work. But you have the connections. It's not about what you know, it's about who. What kind of society is that? What kind of economy is that?
Than actual employees, and this has been the case since going back to 2018. So this is not really a new phenomenon, and obviously the tech field is always ahead of everybody on stuff like this, but that just goes to show you how much the 9-to-5 and traditional work model has already been started to be phased out. And it actually is working out in companies' favor. You can have one of these big...
Yeah, not the workers' favor, and you're seeing it as okay, whatever. And this is where the redundancy happens, so I might just skip it.
Big tech companies that might need to pay one of the highest skilled coders in the world $10,000 an hour, but maybe they only need them for 40 hours total, and instead of paying them millions of dollars a year on a salary basis, they can just pay them a couple $100,000, give them their rate, and be done. So this type of tactic is safe.
This can be comparable to coders. I just hope that their time that they are thinking through the problem is compensated as well, rather than just the problem being solved.
Saving companies a tremendous amount of money. They're only paying for the amount of work they need to be done, and they're saving money on the back end, not paying all the benefits. And this is yet another reason why all of the layoffs that we're seeing right now is not even the full picture of what's going on. Because when they don't rehire contract workers, when you're not renewed for some reason, and we're still seeing a tremendous amount of layoffs, when you actually take a look at the amount of contract work not getting renewed, plus the amount of layoffs that's happening today, this is painting a much more dire situation of the economy than most people realize.
Very true.
But a lot of
He's
people
onto
are
that.
starting to realize it due to how many people have been feeling the economic pinch over the past.
See, he's onto that. The economic inequality really does make it feel like the economy was going to crash, and I felt like it was going to last year. I mean, it ended up not doing that. I ended up feeling like it was every year since I turned 18. Whenever I looked into the price of a house, whenever I looked into the price of a car, whenever I looked into the price of anything, it has gotten so bad. The bubble can only inflate so much until it pops, and I love how a lot of people will bring up the idea of socialism and the Danish flowers, and they're not seeing it right now with capitalism and the stock value.
Last couple of years. You know, they talk about how many jobs were created in 2024. That was all a lie. Okay, they talk about the unemployment figures, which is also a lie, due to how many people who can just jump into doing gig work, due to how many people who were doing gig work or doing contract or freelance-based work that didn't get their contract renewed. They don't count as unemployed. Also, if you've been on unemployment for 6 months or longer, you also don't count as unemployed. So there is a lot of shady stuff going on in order to make these numbers look better than they are. So I wouldn't be giving any of those numbers, whether we're talking the job figures, the unemployment numbers, the inflation numbers, anything like that, any real weight. Because all that really matters is what's happening with real people on the ground. And another side effect of the collapse of the 9-to-5 job in modern society that we're starting to see happen, especially with lower income households, is the amount of evictions ticking up. Now, obviously, people couldn't perform evictions for a couple of years during the COVID days, and then states slowly started allowing it to happen again. But just take a look at this chart here, guys.
This is so tragic, by the way. The amount of homeless people have just been increasing over time, and oh my gosh, it's just regular people who are down on their luck, and then they're kicked on the fucking street, and then that's it for them. Game over. Wasted screen. It's not fully game over. Obviously, you can pick yourself up in that situation, but it's infinitely harder. It is infinitely harder if you do not have access to your documents. Let's say they're stolen by someone else. Let's say you don't have access to an electronic device. Oh, you have to go to a library to fill out applications, job applications. You're telling me that's very plausible? Like, it's possible. It is, but it is infinitely easier to go down a lot of different roads.
As you can see, the eviction filings over the past year in some of these different cities and states, and the numbers are really tremendous, you know.
Okay, filling and refilling counts. This makes sense. No, yeah, this makes sense.
Surprisingly, New York State is at the very top of this list at over 115,000 people being evicted in the past 12 months.
Yeah, Houston, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas being so high, 46K, Dallas, Texas, 36K. Yeah, because a lot of places in Texas are just not affordable, and a lot of companies are doing very underhanded things in North Texas, and these people are being fucked over. And then the people that I worked at in the warehouse are... They saw the Teamsters as evil. They wanted to kiss up. One of the workers there said, like, he raised his hand like he was in class whenever we were being lectured one time. And they were basically saying, Amazon leads with compassion. They would give you employee benefits if they led with compassion. Shut the fuck up.
New York was also one of those states that didn't allow people to get evicted for a while. I mean, it's pretty bad, you know. Places like Phoenix, Arizona, 76,000 people evicted. Houston, Texas, 80,000 evicted. Las Vegas, 48,000. Wisconsin, 26,000.
And it's already
Minnesota.
unaffordable in Tampa. That's why it's looking that low, even though it's super, expensive because, yeah, it's like they
21,000. Even here in Miami, it was about 10,000 people evicted in the...
I'll say the Florida, a lot of areas in southern Florida and a lot of different highly populated cities in Florida, New York, and a lot of these other places in LA, they're struggling a lot because normal people working normal jobs can't exist there. There are always these tech-savvy, affluent, fuckheads who act like they're just so mysterious and complex and they're so cool and they make so much money when really they just came in from a house that they sold in a different area. They gentrified the neighborhood. Now the neighborhood fucking sucks. Now normal people can't afford it. Now a lot of a lot of restaurants are closing down. Now a lot of places are closing down. They rely on undocumented immigrants to get that kind of work done. Now I'm not even sure if that's going to happen under Trump administration because he loves his people when it came to him working on like working on his building. So, you know, they built the Trump Tower. Trump didn't. So he might just have some big examples of some flagrant criminals and then just say that he's kicking them out. Or maybe he'll do some other like damn near genocidal like Hitlerian shit. We'll see.
Past year. So not great. And a lot of people who have lost their job, especially unemployed office workers, are really having a hard time right now finding a new job. As of November of 2024, there are about 7 million Americans unemployed, right? And those are just the official numbers, the ones that are just being counted using the official stats. So it's way more than 7 million people not working.
Let me actually look up how many homeless people are in the US really quick, because I said a million and I corrected. Let me see. Many homeless people in America. Let's use this figure. Yeah, nearly a million. This is 2020. Yeah, but this is the start of 2025. So it's a single night in January. Experiencing homelessness. Got it. This doesn't account for anything on it. So it was really just a million. It wasn't 100,000. I didn't want to like overstate my figures.
But they say about 1.6 million of those 7 million have been looking for a job for at least 6 months, and that's according to the Labor Department. And people who are searching for a job for 6 months or longer is up 50% since 2022. So we can see over...
Yeah, well, 2022 was infinitely different because these fucking millennials and early Gen Z people were able to take advantage of the COVID tax benefits because they had a tax report. We didn't. I was like 17 when COVID was happening, you know, in the first place. And then I was like 18 when the quarantines were really gearing up. I couldn't take advantage of any of the stimulus because I did not file a tax report early enough. I did not file a tax report years enough for them to scale it off of. And so I didn't get it. So cool.
The past couple of years, the labor market...
Oh, what the fuck? Okay, whatever.
This video, there's not much
incentive. I searched it up
for...
to find it. Whatever. We're going to do a different part here. Whatever.
Numbers, the inflation numbers, anything like that, any real weight. Because all that really matters is what's happening with real people on the ground. And another side effect of the collapse of the 9-to-5 job in modern society that we're starting to see happen, especially with lower income households, is the amount of evictions ticking up. Now, obviously, people couldn't perform evictions for a couple of years, especially unemployed office workers are really having a hard time right now finding a new job. As of November of 2024, there are about 7 million Americans unemployed, right? And those are just the official numbers, the ones that are just being counted using the official stats. So it's way more than 7 million people not working. But they say about 1.6 million of those 7 million have been looking for a job for at least 6 months, and that's according to the Labor Department. And people who are searching for a job for 6 months or longer is up 50% since 2022. So we can see over the past couple of years, the labor market has deteriorated tremendously. On average now, it takes people about 6 months to find a job, about a month longer than it did during the early days of 2023. And a lot of this economic pain is actually in the white collar sector. That's like we just talked about, all of those tech layoffs that we've seen happen over the past...
All the tech layoffs, private equity is eating up all the white collar jobs, all the HVAC jobs, all the plumbing jobs, all these other jobs. So these jobs aren't even stable. So when people tell me, oh, get a skill. Get a skill, brother. How about you get a skill? How about you get a skill? How about you get into a trade? That's how you make money. Oh, believe me, these companies are coming for you next. And we're going to have no choice but to have class solidarity and fucking destroy these companies because they're evil.
here.
see.
And now that more and more of these companies are catching on to hiring contract workers and freelancers,
Yeah.
there's not really a need to hire on as many people. They can
Oh,
just hire
he's
people
so good,
when they
right?
need them on an as-needed
Oh,
basis
he's so
and pay
good.
them and be done with it. In this story, they talked to one lady who's 32 years old in Chicago, and she worked in recruiting for tech companies and management consulting firms for a decade. She has found some part-time contract work, but she spent most of her past 8 months hunting for full-time work. And there's still a lot of jobs out there for people who want to work in healthcare or in hospitality. So unless you want to work in a hospital or a doctor's office, or you want to work, a restaurant or a hotel, there's not a lot of options for other people out there, like if you had the traditional 9 to
There's not a lot of options for regular people there, but his idea for regular person is someone working for corporate. This is so funny. Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense because they tend to be the only kinds of people who could actually afford a family today without working like 3 to 5 jobs. So he's kind of right. He's kind of on it.
job. They talked to another guy, 42 years old from Atlanta. He was laid off from his job as a testing manager at a robotics firm in April. And he has applied to almost 500 jobs and interviewed for only 6 and received no offers. That is so discouraging. I just really feel bad for people in this position right now.
So that's the other thing is obviously you can get one of those easier entry level sorts of jobs, but then you'd be told, oh, you're overqualified, or maybe you have to lie on his resume and, act like he's been a bum for all these years. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to work one of those kinds of fast food jobs without questioning your superiors, without like actually, because as much as we want to act like critical thinking is valuable as a skill, it is not in this society. All you got to do is kiss up in order to move up. All you got to do is do more immoral things to move up in life that should be illegal, but they aren't, or rather things that were illegal, but then the laws were changed because these stupid fucking companies wanted to buy senators.
Because you have to have a tremendous amount of drive and willpower to continue applying for jobs on that scale and deal with that level of rejection. So
I'm like this close to just hiring an AI model to do it for me. I'm gonna be honest.
congratulations to anybody who is able to power through that and actually end up landing a good job. But this guy ended up taking the job at Publix, working at the grocery store, because he just wasn't able to find something
Yeah, that's a regular person job, dude. But I get what you're saying.
else in his field. And this also puts people like him in a bad place with unemployment benefits, right? If you start making a little bit of money but nowhere near what you were making before, now you can lose eligibility for food stamps and Medicaid. And also, it might not be enough money to pay your mortgage or your rent or whatever. More and more people are staying on unemployment for the full 6 months eligibility period. In a recent survey that the Conference Board just did in December of 2024, only 37% of people out there looking for a job said that jobs were plentiful, which is down 57% from the middle of 2022.
And you got to keep in mind that these people are also fucking kiss-ups. So it takes a lot for a small amount of these people to actually answer that way.
Okay? And when you take a look at this chart here, which is just the official unemployment stats, you can see that unemployment now is considerably higher in terms of the amount of people who have been unemployed for a considerable amount of time, is way beyond what it was pre-pandemic. And this trend is only getting worse. It's not getting any better. We see this number continue to creep up over the past couple of years. You have job postings for software development and data science and marketing roles about 20% below pre-pandemic levels as of the end of 2024. When you take a look at this chart here, it shows you just how much some of these industries have seen a reduction in hiring. Okay, information is by far the worst. You got financial activities, government, which surprisingly is lower, even though it seems like it should be higher given how many jobs have been government jobs. Transportation, education, and health, everything is lower. Nothing is higher. So a lot of people are looking at, if you need to find a job right now and you're not finding any luck in your current field, you're just looking at a situation where you have to switch industries and switch jobs.
She probably looks normal when she's walking. That's funny.
Fields altogether if you want to get hired somewhere. Just like this guy that was working at a data firm and then he ends up working at Publix. That's quite the shift. But as I promised at the beginning of this video, I'm going to give you a list of companies that are hiring for remote work positions. And even though the amount of remote work positions has shrunk over the past couple of years, you do have more companies starting to warm up to the idea. So you're starting to see some of these job postings come back. Take a look at this house. This house was listed back in May of 2024. I remember walking past this shortly before.
So this is another big thing of this guy's content, is that he'll walk by a bunch of houses and assess the value and see how these predatory landlords aren't actually like selling it, aren't actually like renting it out. They're unable to, because there is zero way that they can for this price. No.
For my California trip, and since then
they
actually raised the price up to 2.65 back in the middle of the summer, thinking that was going to be a great idea. But realized that no one's buying it, and they've had to cut the price significantly since then. In fact, their recent $200,000 price cut now brings them down to a $2.3 million asking price for this home.
And it's still not worth it. That's a little home. I understand that it's very nice, where it could be like maybe 25, maybe 50, maybe 75% more expensive than a average home of that size. But the average home of that size has already had like inflated value. So we're living in times, man.
Clearly, the real estate market is no longer a seller's market. So according to a company called FlexJobs, they have seen a 20% increase in the number of remote job listings in 2024 versus 2023. So here's the list of the 20 companies that are hiring the most for remote jobs in 2025.
Health, Kelly, Robert Half, I mean, I've applied for Robert Half when it came to some IT stuff.
Scroll it through the screen so you guys can take a look.
I didn't
Most
get
of
a
these
job
I've never
there,
heard
though.
of except
I
for
didn't get an interview.
CVS Health. Among the most in-demand roles that these companies are hiring for are product managers and software engineers,
Everett
both
Light
of which offer
Solar.
average salaries that exceed $100,000 per year.
This
And
makes
in the 20
sense.
companies that are hiring the most...
Notice how a lot of these companies are mostly none of the same predatory companies like Meta and Google. They're not the companies that are winning off of exploiting workers more, so they have to try to essentially have their own methods of getting up there. Companies are not conscious ever. They always want more value. A lot of the people who are working for companies want to have their company as successful as possible, and at the higher levels they do more predatory things. At the lower levels they do things to entice people to get them into that company and to have faith in them, and then blind faith in them. And this is just how they work.
Represent mainly
Anyways.
tech, HR, and recruiting, and finance and healthcare. So if you are in one of those fields, this could be a good opportunity for you. And I feel like
See how all these things already need prerequisites.
remote work jobs are the kind of jobs that most people want these days. So if you're somebody in healthcare or finance or a software engineer or HR or recruiting, things like that, I would be looking at this because this could be a great opportunity for you. And I always link all the information that I find for these videos down below, guys. So if you're interested in looking into any of this stuff further, check out one of the stories that this came from, because they actually have a list of more companies, like over 100 of them, that are hiring for remote work positions. Those are just the top 20. So overall, we are losing the 9-to-5 job pretty much forever. It looks like it's going to be going by the wayside within the next decade and maybe gone for good by then. And people are going to have to adapt, and people are going to have to figure out the most sensible solution to keep their income up, to keep...
So that's the thing, is it's not sensible. This whole dichotomy is honestly set up by the lobbyists, by the companies. I think I'm surprised I'm not subscribed to him. I've watched a lot of this guy's content. A lot of it's good. A lot of it is him just going by houses and noticing how unreasonably priced they are in certain areas. Notice how the minimum wage, or like the wages for like low level jobs in certain cities are still relatively high wages, like around the 20 an hour mark, and they're still having a hard time finding people to work there because a lot of the surrounding housing costs way too much for it to be sustainable for that price. So that's it. Honestly, check out this guy's channel if you want to see some delusional landlords. I know there's this funny thing where I remember interacting with some people in voice chat in a random Discord server, and one of them brought up like the female delusion calculator, and obviously that's so far from reality. If everyone, I'm not even gonna go into it. Fuck that fresh and fit shit. Anyways, because we're going into economic shit. Essentially, we need one of those, but for landlords. We really do, because a lot of them are just buying up properties, thinking that they're investors, thinking that they're so cool, and they're just not selling any of it. Or it's by a huge conglomerate that control the prices of housing, that actively like control the price of housing, that way they could charge you higher as a unit rate instead of charging multiple people. So this is where we live at. This is our economy. All right. Well, anyways, I'll see you later. It was nice. This video's nice. This person, honestly, what I mean he's so close is that he just does not understand how this whole dichotomy, or maybe he just does, but he just hasn't said it in the video. And this is just this is the most important detail after watching this, is that a lot of the gig work is literally being applied to those jobs that he claims are steady work. A lot of the gig work, a lot of the contracting is done in very malicious ways to entry-level sorts of workers. And that's something that that's another detail that I really would love to add, and I think you'd find this interesting. I might pick him in the video and see how that works. But anyways, I'll see y'all later.